Good morning and welcome everybody to our press conference to discuss our conservation education collaboration. My name is Nishka Oikolea and I'm the Communications and Education Chief for the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. And I'm just going to turn this over to our esteemed speakers here in a minute, but we have a few housekeeping things. Currently, we have a number of people here in the audience and you're all able to ask questions. However, we're going to hold questions until the very end after all of our speakers. We are also live online and we have a virtual option and we will have that component embedded as well. So thank you all for being here and I will turn this over to Game and Fish Director Nesvik.
Well, thank you, Nish, and thanks for those of you that have taken some time here to come and have a discussion with us about something that I'm certainly very excited about. And we're going to kind of lay out 3 programs that we're kicking off here in Wyoming. But I wanted to give a little bit of background. You know, in our state, as all of you know, wildlife is valued as one of our highest values in the state, and our people are passionate about it. And you know, when you look forward and you think about what got all of us passionate about wildlife, it was some experience, and all of us can point to that experience. It's different for all of us. It might have been a hunting trip, it might have been a walk down a river, it might have been seeing some kind of a really unique bird for the first time, but we all had something that got us hooked on the outdoors and the wildlife and the open spaces of our state. One of the most important things, at least from my perspective, that we can do to ensure our future generations care like we do and understand what we really have here and value it to the level we do, is to provide them those kind of experiences, to provide opportunities for our kids to learn early on about the wildlife resources we have here, about the biology behind them, as well as about all of the components of habitat that are so important for our wildlife here in the state, both on private and on public lands. So what we're going to talk about here today is the launch of 3 programs across the state. You know, when you think about where's the best place to teach our youth about the outdoors, certainly the parents around our great state are many of them take that as one of their most important responsibilities. But also, if you think about our classrooms, what a better place than in Wyoming's classrooms to be able to provide youth conservation education. And so there's 3 programs that we're kicking off now that's going to help us with that and help get this kind of work and education done out in the schools. This has been a very strong collaboration between us and the Department of Education. I really appreciate Superintendent Degenfelder being here today, and certainly the support of our governor and Senator Brasso is so important for this work that I'm going to talk about. But it's been a work by both teams here over the last several months to try to figure out what this looks like in Wyoming. And so that's what I want to talk about. First of all, I want to talk about trout in the classroom. And we're going to have the opportunity to sponsor and facilitate kids being able to take eggs from our fish hatcheries and bring them into their classrooms and hatch them and watch them grow through a semester or through part of the school year, and then figure out what to do with those fish after they've grown these fish. This is a popular program. It's going to be piloted around the state in about 20 schools. We've got a lot of very important partners that are helping fund this, including the Wildlife Fund. And it's been done at a limited scale, but we're going to really redouble our efforts to make sure that schools have the tools they need, the training they need, and the opportunities to be able to take this program further across our state. And our hope is to be able to replicate this across all 23 counties and across the entire state at some point. The other thing that is certainly important is archery education. And so the National Archery in the Schools program, again, we're going to re-engage with that program. We're going to provide some necessary resources. We've worked with our partners at Bow Hunters of Wyoming and others that I've already mentioned to figure out how to bring the right tools to our classrooms so that our teachers have what they need if their schools and their districts decide this is good for them. They have the tools that they need to be able to bring this program and training young kids about the sport of archery and about how important there's a lot of discipline that goes into learning how to archery hunt or just archery shoot. And so, with a lot of these programs, there's skills that kids will learn that will help them with other parts of their education. The third program is nothing that's new to Wyoming, but certainly has not been, I think, fully realized to the capacity we would like to see it, and that's in hunter education. And right now, hunter education is conducted by volunteers around the state. We have a need in our state for more capacity here. And again, what better place for students to be able to have those opportunities than when they go to school? So we've worked hard to facilitate the potential to have teachers actually have this certification or this endorsement put on their teaching license so that they can actually teach hunter education as part of a normal school curriculum in the schools. As many of you know that have taken hunter education in Wyoming, it's not all about firearms. It's not just firearm safety. That's certainly a very large component, but it's also about wildlife conservation. It's about outdoor survival skills. It's about wildlife identification and the life history of a lot of the species that we have here in Wyoming, bear safety. And we also have, I think with this redoubling our efforts here and providing these endorsements or the path for teachers who want to receive this endorsement on their license, it builds capacity across our state for two things. One for our students to be able to meet a legal requirement if they choose to hunt in our state, but also another way to provide and deliver education on all things wildlife to our students. So I'm very excited about this. Again, there's a few folks that have been really important partners for us that I wanted to certainly mention. So we got Nate Brown here from the Wildlife Fund right over here. Trout Unlimited, Corey Toy. Did Corey make it? Okay. Corey's been instrumental. National Archeries in the Schools program, they're not represented here. I think they're online, but I wanted to make sure and mention them. Kenny Lancaster, the president of the Wyoming State Shooting Association, is here, right over here. And Harvey Dalton with Bow Hunters of Wyoming. He's past president. He's sitting right over here. Thank you, Harvey, and really appreciate this kind of work. There's certainly some resources that are going to be provided by the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. There's a limited amount of federal grants associated, not a lot, but we're also committing, the department and the commission are committing resources to be able to make this happen in our state. With that, I'm certainly looking forward to when the other speakers are done answering questions. There's a lot more details here, but in the interest of making sure that all of our speakers have some opportunity to talk, I wanted to stop there, and I look forward to your questions. I'll turn it over to Superintendent Degenfelder.
Well, thank you, Director Nesvik, Nish, all of Game and Fish for teaming up with the Department of Education to announce this very exciting, incredible work that you've been doing in our schools all across the state. And thank you to the governor for being here today, and Senator Barrasso as well, and supporting this great effort and preserving these valuable programs in our schools. I was fortunate to come from a family that fostered hunting and fishing from a young age. I began big game hunting as an early teenager and spent most of my life fishing. And not only have I found a lifelong hobby in these activities, but I learned life lessons in safety, self-sufficiency, personal responsibility. I learned grace in failure. And as my dad always used to say, that elk hunting, life isn't just about harvesting an elk. And I discovered the positive impact that being outside had on my mental health, as well as great respect for the greater ecosystem and environment around me. I even remember in an English class writing poetry about hunting, and in my introduction to public speaking at the University of Wyoming, a how-to speech about how to clean out a big game animal. But again, it wasn't just about that connection to my education. It was those lessons in life that were so influential on me. The influence of these activities remain so strong in my life and to all of us, no matter what path that we've chosen in life. But these opportunities, this exposure, they're not always the norm, even right here in Wyoming. They should be accessible for all children, no matter what family they come from, their socioeconomic status, what neighborhood, ethnicity, whether they're boys or girls, or what neighborhood they come from. And that's exactly what we're doing here today and what we're working to accomplish, bringing these incredible opportunities through education to the classroom, through these conservation crates, to archery, to the fish hatchery program. These are foundational skills that are necessary to build this great nation, and frankly, were necessary to build our civilization. All of these programs are now easier than ever for our teachers to bring to life in the classroom, from science to physical education courses. Not only are these fun and exciting activities, but they also, through partnership with Game and Fish and the Department of Education, align to our state standards. In researching these programs, one statistic that really stood out to me was that Game and Fish notes hunting accidents have reduced by 50% since the advent of hunter education courses. We always look at metrics like this in education to know that we're achieving those positive outcomes. And so I was really proud to learn that in Wyoming, there are over 350 instructors, volunteer instructors, helping with hunter safety. That embodies the Wyoming way. And I want to include in that point applause for the Game and Fish Department and the Professional Teaching Standards Board for their work in creating this hunter safety accreditation for our teachers. This is a really big deal, as Director Nesvik mentioned, and it really brings this opportunity to life in the classroom. So thank you everyone for being here today for this exciting partnership. We at the Department of Education are here to support Game and Fish and do everything we can to make sure that these exciting programs get into our Wyoming schools and our Wyoming communities. So thank you.
Well, Superintendent, I think you said it very well. Brian, thank you so much for the way you've approached this whole program, your whole department of commissioners that are here. It's obvious this is an important part of Wyoming. And I think that the superintendent makes an incredibly good point. Research has shown that if kids are outdoors, they build more synapses. They have more of a sense of ability to solve problems, and they really learn a lot about relying on themselves. When we think about the importance that that education means for just classroom time, you know, my friend Harvey over there, so good to see you with the archery in the classroom. I can't think of anything that's a better demonstration of physics than what shooting a bow does. And you know, to that point, the superintendent and I today just released a new approach to education, which is based on kids, not based on books, but based on what kids are learning, their experiences, and helping them build lifelong learning. What could be more valuable than to watch a fish come from an egg and start to grow? That's what we need to have more. I was just talking a little bit earlier about a writer that lives in Jackson named Ted Carasotti, who wrote a book a few years ago called Blood Ties. And in it, he talks about hunting, and he really explores the wide range, everything from seal clubbing in Iceland, and he talks about that, to trophy hunting worldwide, to his own experiences in Jackson. It's a great book, but the most profound statement is in the last acknowledgement, in which he's talking to somebody in Washington, D.C., who says, I've never really seen a deer. I have no idea where they live, but I know they're wildlife species. They're wild and they need to be free. That's a lot of what's wrong with conservation in our country now. Aldo Leopold, certainly well known among conservationists, was the first to say, no management is a decision. It is a management decision. So from the very first, we've understood that you have to have a knowledge of the species. That's what's so important about hunter education. That's what's so important about having the chance to fish and to be outdoors. And at this point in our country, and this is why it is so great to have our great senator here, at this point in our country, If we're going to talk about conservation, it's not some construct that we built or some idea that we said to AI, tell us what conservation is. It's an understanding of habitat, of species, of how they live, what their requirements are, and how we as humans have to understand that. That's true conservation, not some construct. It's the ability to understand. So that is going to build better students. That is such an important part of Wyoming. And it is an incredibly important part of our knowledge of what we need to do with this great, great state, this great, great country, and the resources that we have. Being able to engage in the classroom with hunter education, with trout in the classroom, and with archery, to know all those things that the superintendent just spoke about. Dr. Nesvik, thank you. It's been a phenomenal opportunity to be here today to announce this. Thank you.
Well, I'm here to stand with Brian and the superintendent, Megan, and our governor to support everything they're doing in this entire wonderful program. It's one reason I'm here. The second reason I'm here is to tell you I'm going to do everything I can do to stop Washington politics getting into Wyoming classrooms. Because that's what's happening right now in Washington with relation to the archery program, the hunting safety programs. And the President of the United States has instructed the Department of Education to not allow any federal funds to be used for programs like these. They've always been used in the past. Because this administration and this president have decided that these are dangerous activities. Well, I brought my friend Mason Kraft here. He's in second grade. He's been an avid hunter. He's gone out with the family, with his mom who was there and his grandmom who were there, and they've been taking him on family outings in Wyoming since he was born. Most recently last week for antelope, right? That's what this is about. You talk about hunter safety. Megan, you gave the specifics. Injuries down, accidents down when people take advantage of these opportunities. Talked about wellness, mental health, all the things. The governor as well talked about the fact that people that are engaged in these programs as students are better students. It helps them focus, be directed. They tend to pay more attention, learn about concentration and focus on things, and will be better students as a result. And you proved it at the University of Wyoming. That's what we're dealing with here. When you talk about conservation and the way this has been taken apart. So John Kennedy was here, President of the United States, the University of Wyoming, 1963. He gave a speech. It was part of his conservation tour. And he said, we have to find the living balance between man's actions and nature's reactions. So when the President of the United States come out with this kind of a dictate to his Department of Education, man's reaction to that, Wyoming's reaction is we're going to stop it and we're going to reverse it. And I've introduced legislation to do just that. 28 Republican senators have already signed on to co-sponsor this legislation. It's called the Arrow Act. It's allowing recreational resources for outdoor, your word, wellness. That's what it's all about. So I'm so grateful that all of you are here today, and we can continue these great historic traditions of the West and of America, and for the next generation to do the same. Because right now the fight in Washington is about against an administration who doesn't want any of us to be able to buy, own, transport, or use firearms. They have no understanding of what the true meaning of the Second Amendment is in terms of our individual rights. And you have a Wyoming delegation who is 100% committed to the people of Wyoming to fight every day to protect the rights that we have been granted as a result of our Constitution. Thanks so much for allowing me to be joining you today. Thank you.
All right, so thank you, Senator, Governor, Superintendent. I really appreciate your support. It's been extremely important for this to have the weight and gravity that I certainly think it deserves in our great state. Like I said, and Nish talked about, we're glad to take questions. I'll kind of lead off, but if the question's more appropriate to one of our distinguished guests to my left, we'll ask them to come up. For anything that's really hard, we're fortunate that today that we have Commissioner Ladwig and Commissioner Masterson from the Wyoming Game Fish Commission. We'll make sure that those two guys get those really hard questions. So with that, we're ready to go. Questions? Ma'am, in the back. So that it's pretty straightforward. At this point in time, there's still a rules process going on to finalize that, to set up the program. But essentially what it will require is some training that we're very glad to provide. And those teachers will go through that training, and there'll be some type of an accreditation type of a accountability to make sure that they have all the course material and that they're ready to go. We have a curriculum obviously already in place that 350 volunteers across the state, as well as many people that work for the department, already provide. And so it'll be that simple. It'll be low red tape, Wyoming driven, and something that we can make happen quickly. You know, it's going through, like I said, our current rules process right now within the state. It's far along in that process. I don't have a specific date for you, but I can tell you it's probably here within the next month to 2 months. Ma'am.
When are you looking at, I mean, you kind of answered, that a couple months from now for the teachers to learn. Are you looking at it coming out in a year or 2 years, and when will the grades start to where they can do archery or, learn hunter safety at the schools?
Yeah, excellent question. So I think the question is when could students start taking advantage of this opportunity? I think we're probably looking at the beginning of the next school year for the hunter education portion of this. As far as the other two programs, potentially quicker. We're not waiting on the PTSB to finish doing the certification and endorsements, but I think reasonably next fall, students will be able to start taking advantage of hunter education in the schools.
And then do you know what age group, is it when they first start reading, or will it be like 5th grade, or?
Yeah, 5th grade and then above. Now, there's currently some schools in the state that are already doing this in 5th grade. Most of them focus in middle school, but this will be available based on the desires of the local school district, local school, to do it 5th grade and up. What else? Ma'am? Yes, it is. Sir?
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I mean, with Wyoming being a very big outdoors state, when did this idea of incorporating outdoor education into school come about? When was the idea sparked?
So there's actually been, because Wyoming is so valuable to our state and has been for a long time, there's been components of this at different times throughout the last 10 to 20 years in our state. But we really felt like there was a need to organize it a little bit better, to provide more resources, to provide training, and to do it in a much more, in a bigger way, like we're doing here today. And so it's certainly not new. I mean, heck, when I grew up, and I think this might still be the case in some places, there was, in some districts, the first day of elk season was off. Kids didn't have to go to school that day. So it's always been important, but this is trying to provide support to make sure more school districts can take advantage of it. Ma'am. Sure. I'm probably not the smartest guy to be able to talk about how. I'm not an education guy. I grew up as a game warden, so I can't talk specifics about how it will be applied to different grade levels. But what I can tell you is that the folks that are being provided and the training and the opportunity to deliver this particular product are teachers. And so they know how to apply this to different age groups. That's what they do every day. And, we certainly know that in Wyoming, we have great teachers, and we are confident that they're going to be able to make that work. Anything online, Brianna? Oh, I'm sorry, Superintendent.
Sure. So thank you, Director Nesvik. Just to follow up on that as well. So from fourth grade up, the teachers will really be able to individualize those. And as I said, they will be aligned directly to our standards. And so it'll be about applying those to standards. And it's just a really exciting way to make it, competency based, that those teachers can really apply it. And I think the other exciting thing about this initiative, about this partnership and program, is that it's being created so organically. And so it will go to the teachers, to our local school boards, rather than a top-down mandate from the state. That's really how we want to do business in Wyoming, and that's exactly how this program should work.
Okay, any other questions? Brianna, is there any online? Sir?
Yes, this is for the state level. If the current federal administration does not soften up on their education funding for such cultural projects, are we prepared to go further? You've introduced a new bill, insert to change that law, but has the Attorney General of the state looked at the constitutionality of what's going on, looking forward in case that doesn't turn around?
So I've got a couple thoughts for you, and then I'll turn it over to the senator or the governor here. First, I'll tell you that my interpretation is that the Department of Education at the national level, not our Department of Education, has interpreted this Dangerous Weapons in Schools Act. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but they've interpreted federal legislation wrong. And the intent of that legislation was never to pull back any funding to the states. However, their interpretation is that it does exactly that. My interpretation is that even with that guideline they have to the Department of Education, if our superintendent at the state level chooses to administer these programs, she can continue to do that. Senator Brasso's efforts and the other members of our congressional delegation, their bill, I think, will make it very, very clear, and there won't be any more argument about it when that passes. And I say when it passes because I'm confident it will. But those are my thoughts. I'll turn it over to the governor and senator.
Yeah, the answer is that we will look at every aspect of the constitutionality. We also back the senator's work on this issue, but it is incredibly important that we stand firm on this and that we figure out ways that we can make sure that the value of these programs is appreciated in DC. So that they don't have this sort of numbskulled notion that somehow we can drive these policies down to the local level. You've heard the superintendent talking about how hunter safety accidents have declined. You've heard very convincingly how valuable these programs are. We want to make sure that if Wyoming has the opportunity and our school districts have the opportunity to pursue these programs, and we'll go to any degree to protect that. Thanks.
And we're sure going to use this legislation as an opportunity to educate the country on the value of these programs. So I can see, we have 28 co-sponsors. I mean, I can see going to the floor of the Senate, standing here with Ted Cruz and a number of other senators and Cynthia Lummis, and making the case and doing all the things that the governor's talked about and that Megan has talked about and that Brian has talked about today to explain to America the value of these programs and to show the contrast of anybody that would say this isn't valuable for our citizens and for the future generation. So that's the fight that's going to go. It's going to be a political fight all the way through. And this is the same fight that we've had. This is why the Gun Owners of America, National Rifle Association, so many groups have supported what we've done. But the groups that don't want anyone to buy, own, transport, or use firearms are going to be coming at us and are patting the president on his back for trying to deny the next generation what we grew up with and our parents taught us. They don't want the next generation to learn those valuable skills and insights.
Nish?
Brian, we had a question online. When did Wyoming schools originally stop their reliance
So I cannot tell you exactly how long ago. It's been quite some time. I do recall that when it happened, it was during a time when we were cutting programs within the agency. We had revenue shortfalls, and we had to make some difficult decisions on what would be cut. At that time, I believe we cut over 10% of our budget. This has been 12 years ago, roughly. And so that's the reason. It was a budgetary concern before, but we're in a position now where this is a high priority. This falls directly in line with the department's Inspire a Kid It's for Life program. And so it's a priority, and we're going to make it work. Ma'am. So the question was, how are these programs funded? So right now, nearly all of the funding is going to come from the Game and Fish Department and Commission. We have two great commissioners here today that are going to help us with that. And then we also have incredible partners that have already provided support through cash. We've had the partners here today. And so that's going to be the primary means. There are some federal grants that are available, but this is really a Wyoming-driven, Wyoming-resourced kind of an initiative. All right, I don't see any more hands. I don't see anything online. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Senator Brasso, Governor Gordon, Superintendent Degenfelder, I really appreciate you elevating this with your support to the importance it deserves. And you're taking time out of your busy schedules to be here today is really important for all of us. And the whole state's going to get to hear about this now because we've done this here today. And I will conclude with that. But certainly, if any of you have any closing comments you want to make, you're welcome to. So.
We got to get a picture with Mason, who may one day be the commissioner.
He might. Mason, I'm looking forward to that. We can talk, all right? All right, thank you all for coming.